My name is Nikhil and I want to show a module that I have been working on. I kind of written this module for the workplace that I work, edX. So it's called feature toggle. How many of you here have heard about feature toggling concept in software development? At edX we do Drupal for front end, and at the back end we do Python, Django, and it's pretty familiar in other technologies about this feature toggling. So the concept is just that. So let me show you a Git model. So we use Git flow, and the concept is that there is a main development branch, and when you're working on multiple features, you create multiple feature branches for each and everything. But sometimes you might not want to push this feature branch into production because you're waiting on some announcement by the marketing or something like that. But we don't want to keep this feature branch not being merged to develop, because when you're working on multiple feature branches, there will be a lot of Git conflicts when you're trying to merge these feature branches. So this concept allows you to work on a feature request, code it, and merge it back to the production branch. So all the code is there and you deploy it, but the feature is not visible to the user until marketing enables the feature. So it's just like Drupal module. So you're like creating a new module, and you don't enable the module until you want to show it to the user. So you deploy that module to production, and you only enable it when you want the user to see the particular feature thing. And you might ask that, we have a features module and it kind of serves that purpose, but we work on these feature branches or these features, like hundreds of features, and we don't want hundreds of modules on our side. So what I did was I created a module, and it allows to create multiple features using variables and settings, and it gives a PHP function to check whether a feature is enabled or not, and a JavaScript function that tells whether a feature is enabled or not. So let me show an example. So this is our staging site, and if I look at a course, currently this course has this ratings and reviews, because the feature is enabled. But here we have deployed this particular course ratings and reviews feature to stage, and marketing now has the ability to hide it or show it. So when I say hide it, when I disable it, now whoever user visits this page will not see those ratings. And when marketing feels that this particular rating widget is good to go, and when they make an announcement that this now we have rating features in the courses, they don't need to ask a developer to do a code deployment or that stuff. They can enable it themselves. And now we have the rating widget here. And part of the reason why we did this particular thing as a feature toggle thing, because we are using a third-party review system, and if there are any issues with that review system or something, we don't want to show a broken thing here, so we can just hide that particular feature at that point. And the module is a simple, lightweight, and it's performant. So a developer will just modify the settings.php with the feature name, and currently here, if you inspect, so there is as Bill was showing about Drupal settings object, there is a global variable with all those enabled features that I created. So this is a Drupal settings object, and I'm adding a FT enable features object on every page. So whatever JavaScript in the code, what we do is in the JavaScript file we say that if this particular variable exists, then do this code or show this widget or hide it. And we can do all sorts of things. And lastly, the other hooks we use is that when the marketing person enables or disables this feature, we call these PHP function hooks. So we could say that enable the Facebook module or any other modules, and we can do a bunch of code in that particular thing. And whenever the enabling or disabling happens, we can these things get executed and that's something. Any questions?
So this actually changes the Git repository?
You commit everything into the Git repository, saying with a condition like if this particular variable is set, then execute this code. So though the code has all the features, it will not execute because it's checking for a variable and the variable isn't enabled or is disabled. All the code is in the Git repository, and the Git repository is pushed to production. So the production site will be having this code, but it's just that when it's executing the code, it will check if this particular feature is enabled, then only execute the code. If not, don't execute.
Is that what's in settings PHP? Because you said you do something to settings PHP?
Yeah, in settings PHP you define these features.
Okay.
Like a developer defines these features and writes the code based on the feature name. If this feature name is enabled, do this stuff.
Okay.
And we push it to code. But until the marketing team enables that particular feature in the database, it doesn't get executed.
Got it. What I think is interesting about that is I actually work, technically I'm in the marketing department at my job.
Okay.
So,
that sounds kind of ambivalent.
Yeah, that.
well, I guess it's because, I work in the Office of Communications and Marketing, but I don't do any marketing. I don't know anything. I'm trying to learn a little bit about marketing, but I don't really know anything about marketing.
You don't want to.
Well, I hear you, and I mostly agree, but, you always want to be open-minded and learn things. So it's interesting to see, like, that kind of level of engaging marketing to be able to make those kind of decisions and give them the tools to do stuff, and that it's a pretty simple tool.
Right in the back end.
So it's obviously, in that sense, it's not rocket science and it's easy for them to use, but I think it's interesting to kind of give them that level.
We have this particular thing at our thing, like marketing always announces these things, and it's hard to do a deployment before that and expect that everything is fine. We need to do a lot of tests, and we don't keep hold on this thing. We rather push it to prod, and they will take care of showing or hiding part of it.
Yeah.
Can you explain? So why would you do that over just doing it in features? What's the main?
Right. So, we do this every week releases, right? So, if we are creating a new feature for every deployment or every feature, then it will be like hundreds of modules which we don't want to enable or disable at that point. One thing, and also feature, like you can say that course rating is a feature. So you create a feature for this course rating and say when you enable it, show it, and disable it, show it. But tomorrow another feature request comes that do some, like, modify the rating widget of that particular feature. Don't modify the whole thing, but then again you will have two features created for this particular course feature or course rating feature. So to avoid that, we would rather thought it will be more performant and using less modules stuff. Do you have any other disadvantage?
A case scenario for me, why.
Right, and the other thing is that a lot of other developers work on this platform. Not everybody knows how to create a feature in Drupal and all that stuff. Now I can just have these instructions on modifying the settings.php, and my JavaScript or front-end person just can modify the settings.php with the feature name and can use the JavaScript checking to write his own code. He doesn't need to know how to create a Drupal feature or deploy it and all that stuff.
You don't mean settings.php, you mean Drupal.settings, don't you?
No, the feature has to be defined in the code. When he writes
settings.php.
So in settings.php, it is a variable. What it's doing is that feature underscore flags is a variable that has all these feature names. In settings.php, when you say $conf of that, it will override that variable.
Okay.
So when you say in settings.php, when you modify the object, feature flags object, the database where marketing is looking at that page, they see that particular feature name where they can enable or disable. That's what's happening here. And pretty sure.
Contrasting this with features, do you have, or does this come up with kind of like issues with dependencies and things like that? Because one of features nice things but also annoying things is how it kind of brings all this other stuff with it. So have that issue, like, or does this sort of get you? I mean, has that just not been a real problem for you yet, or anything like that, where you have one thing that sort of somehow has something to do with yet another thing that somebody pushes or whatever?
So with dependencies, right? Like, I mean, I have hooks that get called when a feature is enabled or disabled. So if I want to control the dependencies, I will say that here, this particular feature, when this particular feature is being enabled, enable this module or disable this module. So a developer can program that.
Yeah.
And this module is intended for developers to create these features and that.
Okay. Yes. Curious.
Thank you.